Hey YouTube, it's your boy Widgie here, coming at you with some more Age of Mythology Retold content. And in today's video, it's not as glamorous as previous ones, but we're going to be delving into the settings for the game because there's some kind of counter-intuitive settings that you might not be aware of and you might want to enable or disable depending on your preference. Now, before we get into this, I'm just going to caveat right now, this is all dependent on the power of your video card. So my video card is the NVIDIA 3070 Ti. And I've got to say, as I've said in previous videos, the stability and performance of this game has greatly improved when compared to the stress test that happened in July. So these are my settings, and I will provide some recommendations around some graphical settings depending on what video card you're maybe using. But also, as I mentioned, we'll look at some UI stuff, some other game-related options as well. So without further ado, let's get into it. So we're on the main menu here. We're going to jump to settings and graphics first. So they only give you two options here, windowed or borderless, and we're gonna stick with borderless. Resolution is what it is for your monitor. Now, frame rate limit. Now, this is all performance dependent, but for me, when I had it on 60, I did notice that it was a little bit slow, let's say. Just a little bit, not juttery, but it wasn't really performing where it needs to be. So if you're running at 60, maybe jump it up to 120 if it's possible, depending on the performance of your graphics card. But with mine, I've just put it all the way to full, and it seems to be working pretty good. The only stability issue I get at the moment is on very, very large god powers. For some reason, my FPS absolutely tanks, and I'm hoping that the developers can maybe try and do something to optimize that in the future. But anyway, let's move on. So VSync is an interesting one. Depends if you have certain NVIDIA options or if you're maybe using AMD, whether you want to have this on or off. For now, I have it on and it seems to be doing okay. But if you do have certain advanced settings on NVIDIA, for example, there may not be a requirement to have this on. So I'm leaving it on for now unless I stumble into something quite unusual in the game where I'm having some kind of problems. I'm going to leave that on. So looking at quality, for me, from the stress test, or from not from the stress test, but from looking at my graphics card, they recommended all of these. Now, if you want to go down more of a competitive route, and if you don't want to be looking at the visuals too much, I'd really recommend putting foliage to none or minimal, so it doesn't clutter the screen too much. You can see what's going on. Dynamic reflections, for example, you might want to put that to none. And ambient occlusion, you might want to turn that off. Effects qualities, you might want to drop that down as well. Same with water as well, put that down low. And as we come down here, certain things like dynamic lighting or bloom, for example, you might want to turn those off. If you're solely looking at a very, very high performance, highly competitive setup where you're playing multiplayer a lot and you don't want to be looking at all the clutter on the screen and you want to just be enjoying the game for its competitive nature and getting that competitive edge, I would recommend some of those settings to be turned off. Now, anti-aliasing is a strange one, folks, because I think FXAA is quite nice. A lot of people are going to probably debate around this. Even having none might be quite good if you've got graphics card issues or your graphics card isn't particularly powerful. I've found that with temporal anti-aliasing, even if you have sharpening below 100%, anything below 100%, it just looks too blurred for me. It looks like I need to wear glasses. I'm already wearing glasses, but it feels like I need to put another pair of those glasses on because it's very, very blurred. I found, me personally, the FXAA is quite nice. It's quite a nice middle ground. I quite like it, and that's just personal preference. But as I mentioned, bloom, you might want to turn that off, of course, if you're looking to be a little bit more competitive. You want to clear some of that clutter off of the screen. All right, moving on to game. Now, this setting right here is one that I do not know for the life of me why this is automatically turned off. When you load up your settings, it will be default as turned off, which means that when you're trying to edge pan on the side of your screen, or screen edging, for example, if you have more than one monitor, your arrow will just glide off of that monitor and go onto your other one, and it's so annoying. I do not know for the life of me why they have this turned off. They should just default have it turned on. It's a strange one for me, but this is going to be one of the major ones that you're going to want to select. Lock the mouse to window, have that one on. This is all preference. The panning speed, this is very, very slow. Once again, if you want to be more competitive, you probably want this higher so that you can move around quicker when you need to. If you're just enjoying watching a replay or you're enjoying campaign or something, you might want to have this lower. At the moment, it defaults on 5%, but I'm probably going to up this to potentially maybe 15, 20%, for example. Now, default zoom level, once again, another kind of preference. I tend to have this as zoomed out as possible if I am playing competitive. When I'm in a certain fight and I might need to micro, I might want to quickly zoom in. Default level, though, is whenever you start a game or a multiplayer game, it's where the zoom level is going to be. So once again, this is more personal preference. I tend to have it slightly zoomed out, so maybe like a 20% is probably where I want to be. Camera rotation. Once again, it's quite nice if you are casting or watching replays or something. Having that enabled is good. It automatically is enabled, and all you need to do is hold down control. I believe it's control and mouse wheel to be able to turn the screen. Camera acceleration, I'm just going to leave that off. There is acceleration in Age of Empires 4, for example, but it can be a bit irritating. I would just leave this at 0%. Shake is a preference. I'd probably turn this one off, to be honest. When I'm playing, I'm going to turn that off. It's just going to be a bit annoying. Camera edge scrolling, I'm going to leave that on. All of these, pretty much leave them on. Moving on to gameplay. This one's going to be a big talking point. Immediately auto-queuing villagers at game start. So, I would honestly say, if you're new to this game, you're new to RTS, and you enjoy the auto-queue function from Age of Mythology, the previous Age of Mythology, the Extended Edition, or even the OG Age of Mythology, I would just put this on. And the reason is you don't have to worry about immediately queuing a villager. The game will do it. The minute it starts, that villager is going to be in queue. And it's quite nice because you save a few seconds of a villager not being in queue. So I would leave that on, me personally. Others who are very, very sort of competitive in RTS, higher level players, are just very used to queuing their own villagers. So once again, that comes down to preference. Immediately auto-train villagers in newly built ones. I like this one to be on as well, me personally. Allow villager priority, enables the use of the AI villager priorities feature. Don't really know what that is. I think that's the option if you're maybe playing on Xbox or if you want to use... I'm not entirely sure what that one is, ladies and gents. I'm going to be honest with you, but default is on. I'm just going to leave it on for now. This one's quite nice, the one-click garrison. So it means that if you have units, you just right-click and they go into the building. So if you need your villagers to go into a tower or you need to go into a TC, you just simply select your villagers and right-click on the building and they will go into it. The only issue is if those villagers have resources and you want to drop them off, when you right-click on the TC, will they drop off first and then you have to right-click again for them to go in? That happens on Age of Empires 4. I don't know whether it's going to happen on Retold here. But for me, I honestly would have that on. Easy drag select. I've used this on Age of Empires 3 for myself. So for me, I would actually want this on so that villagers aren't grouped with my military units, for example. So I'd like to leave that one on. Default unit stance is aggressive. It's entirely up to you. I tend to always leave that one on aggressive. Control left click is treated as a double click. Kind of a strange one. I just wouldn't mess around with that. Now, villager double click selects the villagers performing the same action and idle, or it just selects all of your villagers on the entire map. I mean, this one's a weird one, right? Select only idle villagers. That might be quite good. It's a strange one. When do I ever double click all villagers? I honestly don't think I do. Going to be honest. This one, choose whether to show walk paths when giving commands. I'd say probably not, honestly. This one here is quite a nice one. Recording games. Record game, just put on. And that will mean what will happen is it will just keep building up your replays and you won't accidentally overwrite some of your replays from maybe when you've been playing on multiplayer, for example. You might want to look at some of the stuff. A lot of you guys are probably going to be maybe playing more than 10 games in a day, especially when the game comes out. So I would honestly just put that as on, and then you don't have the issue of any overwrites, and you can go into the folder and delete them when you want to. Enable autosave, we keep that on, of course. And disable cutscene character portraits, leave that off. Okay, moving on to UI. We have enable Ultra HD UI assets. Allows the usage of the 4K assets, works best on... I don't have a 4K monitor. Honestly, I'll just leave this, going to be honest with you guys. Unless you have a whacking great monitor, you might want to turn it on. Give it a go, see if there's any performance issues. But for me, I'm going to leave it off. Now, this one is personal preference, the alternative HUD layout. So if you've been playing on the old Age Mythology, or if you've been playing maybe on Age of Empires 3 or 2 or 4, if you're used to having your resources down on the bottom right part of the map next to your minimap, then I would select the alternative HUD layout. If you like to have all your resources up top bar, then I would just leave this off, to be honest. HUD scale is a preference once again. If you want to see more of the game and you've got good eyesight and you don't worry about it, drop that sucker down to 70. If you are struggling to see the specific unit information when you hover over it, or if you're struggling to distinguish units and buildings, you might want to up it to maybe 85, 90, or even the full 100, which the default setting is usually at. So I tend to drop this to about 90, 85 for me personally. And then there's a few things around when to show hit points and stuff, whether they take damage or show hit points while holding Alt. That's really nice. It's a good feature if you need to know what units to maybe target. But I like all of these options as they are, to be honest with you. It's quite nice. Showing the global queue is really nice as well. So you can always see what research, what units you're queuing at the top left part of your map. The only annoying thing is the UI is a little bit clunky because it's all over the place. You've got this on the top left. If you've got your resources on the bottom right, it's all not sort of together, and it can be a bit confusing where you need to look on your UI. It can get a bit annoying. So maybe you might want to put your resources on the top part of the map, so you also have your global queue on the top part of the map as well. I'm not too sure how you want to do that. All right. Threshold to snap. Haven't really messed around with that, going to be honest with you guys. I have turned on the attack range for all of these. I recommend doing this. When you select a TC, or when you select a hill fort or an outpost, you can see a nice ring around where the area or the range of that building is when it will shoot. This is very important when you're trying to build defenses, making sure that stuff is covered and defended. Attack range can be really good. Same with unit selection as well. Trying to know like what kind of range so you can poke with units. This is an extra competitive edge, so I would recommend having all of the display attack ranges on. And everything else I've kind of left on here, to be honest with you. Sound, once again, the game for me is a little bit loud, so I like to turn it down, but it all depends on your setup. Hotkeys, that is a whole nother video entirely, going to be honest with you guys, so we're not going to touch upon that too much. Accessibility, however, can be quite a nice area. You can change your setting if you're colorblind. I'm slightly colorblind, for example. They have different color sets that you can use here, for example. So you can change your specific color here for player one. The whole palette here you can change, and if you like a different color, you can switch it, and that will also be enabled when you're playing multiplayer. Whether it's ranked, whether it's unranked, it will apply. But for now, I'm going to keep it as normal. And minimap contrast is quite nice. Under visibility, the minimap contrast is quite nice. So it will really, really make it quite obvious on the minimap what is contrasting between a terrain and between units. So for me, because I'm slightly colorblind, I am going to up that to 50% just to test that out, but I'm pretty sure 50% is going to be quite nice. Now, narrator is that text-to-speech narrator voice. I have all of that off, but of course it's quite nice depending on... There we go. So that's kind of how it sounds if you need voice to chat on. And this one here, downloadable content. Enable the Legacy Deity Portraits pack. So you can see if I select this, I go ahead and I apply. Let me just quit here. Just in case I haven't messed around with any settings whilst I've been talking. If I go back to DLC, I go and apply that. If I then go to the tech tree, you can see all of the old gods and how they look. But they have actually been redefined a little bit and remastered a little bit. Loki definitely looks a little bit different here, which is nice. Freya is completely brand new, of course, so there is no legacy picture for him. But you can see that they have redone some of these minor gods here. So if you do want to have a look and just have the old school portraits, then by all means you can do. I quite like it because I struggle sometimes to know who I'm playing against. So this can be quite nice to keep on if you want to. I'm just going to see if I can get used to the new ones. So I'm going to go ahead and put it back to the new view, which is pretty badass, to be honest. And there we go, guys. That is it in a nutshell. The settings, my recommendations so far, some really good ones in there. And of course, let me know down in the comments below if there's any I've missed. Maybe if you disagree with some of the settings that I've got. One of the big things is obviously about the graphical settings. Well, all I would say is try and use the benchmark function. And if you don't want any of the bloom, if you don't want any of the extra terrain details that might clutter your screen and might make it difficult for when you're playing competitively, just turn those ones off and just focus on the things that you really care about when you're trying to play Age of Mythology Retold. All right, guys, I'll catch you in the next Retold video very shortly. I'll catch you then. Bye.